My name is Henry Dyson. Again, I know some of you, I recognize you on the screen for this. I'm the director of the Office of National Scholarships and Fellowships, and maybe we'll bounce out in a minute when we're doing the website tour to look at the ONSF page. ONSF is a sub-office within the honors program. We're located within the honors program, but we actually work with students all through the university. And then I still do these honors funding opportunities for the honors program. So that's who I am and what I do. Barb, do you want to give a quick introduction for yourself that we will have on the recording?
Yeah, I'm the administrative coordinator in honors. I have several different jobs. One of them is oversight of the finances. I also do or coordinate some of the student hiring and GSI hiring, that kind of thing, faculty appointments. And I do the administrative work for grants, scholarships, and fellowships, and which means I also process the awards that are given to students. So if you ever have any problems with awards, like not seeing them in your student account or something like that, you would contact me.
So I would say that Barb and I, our work on honors funding opportunities is a little bit like a Venn diagram, except I think it's one of those Venn diagrams where her circle now encompasses all of mine, and then I've got a little circle within that. I do some of the advising for this. I do some of the selection process for these opportunities, but Barb also does all of that. So you can reach either one of us by emailing honors.scholarships@umich.edu. I don't know, Barb, if you've got a chance, maybe you can throw that in the chat
Yeah.
for them quickly. So this is an email that will go to us. It also goes to Lisa Broom and Denise Guillot that we'll talk a little bit about with Catalyst grants. It will cover everything that we're going to talk about today except for Honors Summer Fellows. When we get to Honors Summer Fellows, that's Kaylee and Mika. And so they'll have a different email for that, and we'll talk about that when we get to it. So let me give you a quick idea of what we're going to do today. First thing we want to do is just to talk about the kinds of funding opportunities that Honors both does and does not have. And then we want to put some meat on those bones by actually going through and giving you a quick tour of the funding opportunities that we have on the Honors Program website. We'll just give you a quick introduction to each of those, tell you where they might fit in your timeline, where they might fit in your planning, and then we'll let you go to those website pages for more details on those and the application processes for each. Then I want to just say a real quick piece about how, as an advisor, I see these funding opportunities fitting into your four-year academic planning. And then we're going to open it up to questions to all of you. So let's go ahead and jump in and let me do the first bullet point on that agenda and talk about the kinds of funding that Honors does and does not have. And I actually want to do this by going to share screen. I want to show you where to find these opportunities, and I'll probably do a lot of this info session just talking in front of this. So here we are on the Honors Program website, and if you click on current students, now you can come to honors funding, and most of what we're going to talk about is going to be here, except I said this HSF, it has its own page. So what funding does the honors program have and what do we not have? What we don't have are tuition support or cost of attendance scholarships. So big $10,000, $20,000 plus scholarships that are the kinds of things that sometimes parents will contact us about, sometimes students will contact us about, especially after kudos letters goes out. Hey, I'm doing really well, I have a high GPA, what scholarships are available to me? The honors program just has not recruited, and the reason for that is it takes a tremendous amount of endowment funding to provide those scholarships. So the way that the preferred funding model is for those things is not just that we put money in the bank in order to spend, but we actually put money in the endowment, and then we live off the investment income that money generates, which is typically 4 to 5% on the investment. So just to generate one, say, $25,000 tuition support scholarship takes a tremendous amount of endowment funding. What we have done instead is to recruit money to support various different types of curricular or co-curricular engagement opportunities that we feel fit within the engaged liberal arts pedagogical philosophy that guides what all the things that we do in the honors program, or that recognize and celebrate various types of curricular and co-curricular achievements that again exemplify that engaged liberal arts pedagogical philosophy. So as I look over all the funding opportunities that we have, each of them is really doing one of those two things. And actually, if you think about it, those two things fit together. When we celebrate certain types of achievements and co-curricular engagement, we hope that that is then also inspiring people to fit those things into their plans. And that's part of the reason that I wanted to do this session and tell you about some of these things and where they might fit into your planning. The other thing that I'll say about the gifts that we have, when I look over them for this interview, some of these are funds that the honors program initiated because we have certain types of activities that we really wanted to support and enable students to do. And of course, one of the guiding principles that we have is that students should be able to come in and engage in all of these types of educational opportunities, regardless of the financial resources that they can bring in order to support them. So some of the times we have initiated those things, and we've gone to donors and done a lot of fundraising in order to raise money to support those. The other way that we get funds, though, is that sometimes donors will come to us with money that they want to give, and sometimes they have ideas. Sometimes they have very specific ideas about the types of engagement activities that they want to enable, or the types of things that we want to celebrate. So I think you'll recognize some of both of those different types of ways that we arrive at funding as we go through the page. So let's maybe kick off our tour of the types of engagement opportunities that are available with talking about our Catalyst grants and our research and travel grants. And this is really Barb's bread and butter. So let me turn it over to Barb Frecka to tell you more about each of these types.
So you can find the Catalyst grants by, clicking on either the picture at the bottom of that previous page or on the sidebar there. So the Catalyst grants are for first and second year students. They provide support for research and civic engagement. We know our students are engaged in a wide variety of community engagement and social justice initiatives, and we want to support that work. The grant supports DEI and social justice projects, and it's intended to foster the development of lower division students. Ideally, we hope that it will enable students to make community engagement a meaningful part of their long-term plans. The application is located on the page where it says apply here, with a description of what you'll be asked to complete on the application. Lisa Broom, our associate director, and Denise Guillot, one of our advisors, review the applications and make the decisions on who will receive the Catalyst grant. The grants are usually from about $500 to $1,000. And so I have a few examples of previous projects that we funded for the Catalyst grant. For example, one was a student that was involved in a student org called FEMMES, FEMMES, which stands for Females Excelling More in Math, Engineering, and Science. And this org had programs for girls in 4th through 8th grades, but nothing for high school girls. So this student used the funding to establish a program for 9th through 11th grade girls. Another example is that funding was used to support a student's unpaid internship with a nonprofit organization called 482 Forward. This is a grassroots educational organization that works with community members in the city of Detroit. And more recently, Catalyst grant funding was used to support a student who worked with 2 organizations to create a system of intake and distribution to provide free groceries to students in need at local colleges and universities. So those are some examples. You know, they can be varied. If you're in doubt whether your idea you know, would qualify for a Catalyst grant, please email honors.scholarships@umich.edu, which is on that page, and you'll receive a reply within a day or 2. I would just send an email asking all the questions that you have, and it'll probably be Lisa or Denise that will reply to you. So that's pretty much the Catalyst grant in a nutshell. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I forgot to say at the beginning, in order to provide some back and forth, you don't have to wait until we've gone through all of the list of these things. We'll try to pause, try to remember to pause, you know, at various points and just unmic yourself. We have a small enough group that you can just unmic yourself and send a question to us. If you're more comfortable, you're also, you know, welcome to throw that into the chat and we'll ask. Or
This
one of
might
the
be
research and
so.
travel grants, and I'll monitor the chat if anybody does throw in a
Okay,
question.
sure. Did I hear somebody asking a question?
Yeah, so
Good.
this might just be the person of who I am, but on the relative like competitiveness of it, what is, you know, how many applicants do you guys review for the Catalyst grants and everything?
So I'm not as familiar with these grants because, as I mentioned, Lisa and Denise review them and make the decisions. But from what I know, I don't think this grant is super competitive. I believe there are maybe 5 to 10 applicants a year for this grant. I forgot to mention that the application is open now and will close on March 1st. So it's not a super competitive grant from what I know.
That's my take on it as well. From conversations with them, is that, you know, the review process is really about fit. Sometimes it's also about using the application to help people refine their ideas. But it's not something where, you know, we have 100 applications for 5 spots. That you know, I think this is, and this is the case with a number of our honors funding things. You know, I think a number of these fly below the radar, and so you know, we really want to get these ideas out there and promote more applications for most of these programs that we're going to talk about.
Any other questions? If you have any in the future, though, as I said, please email honors.scholarships and we'll be happy to answer your questions. So I'll move on to the honors grants for research, travel, and special projects. This is, I think this is the grant we have, I would say, the most applicants for. It, as Henry mentioned, we have donors that, you know, make donations for most of our grants and scholarships. We have several funds that we use for this, for these particular grants. They have different parameters that we have to adhere to, but usually, you know, we can find a grant that will go with whatever your proposal is. So this year, if so that there were research, travel, and special projects. This year, if student travel is allowed, we have to adhere to university policies. So we included a link for Global Michigan, the Global Michigan website, which will tell you if student travel is allowed to certain countries and certain areas. I noticed on the CGIS website that they are posting opportunities for summer travel to certain countries. I don't know if they're just posting them and hoping that travel will be allowed to these areas, because when I looked on the Global Michigan website, some of these countries, or actually it said all student travel is restricted. So, you know, I think they're just waiting to see if travel will be allowed. Do you have any sense of this, Henry?
I did. I had an update on this in a meeting this morning, and this is not official. You know, we had Patrick Morgan, who actually runs that group for the provost's office, in a recent committee that I had, and he's like, "It's a fluid situation. It's constantly changing." Um, the programs that CGIS are funding are typically they have third-party providers with in-country support. So I think they're thinking that it's going to be very location specific, but they're also looking for programs where students would have that support or would sort of be organized in one place if we had to do a lockdown or a, so I'm not sure that the outlook looks quite as good for individual self-designed student travel, but who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? So this might be one also where we, you know, we might have to say to people, look, this looks like a really good idea. We'd love to fund it, but we're just going to have to monitor. We can't give you funds until we get permission for travel to that location. So we just can't give, we can't give any funding that's contrary to to university policy, obviously. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So our top priorities for this grant are to support thesis-related research and travel, but we will consider other projects if pending available funding. I urge you to look at this webpage at the ineligible expenses. There are a few, and I would hate to see you go through the trouble of filling out an application only to find out that we're not able to fund the request because it's an ineligible expense. So please do look at those. The application is on this webpage. You click on the picture, apply online, and which will open the application. It's open right now and will close on March 1st.
And we typically do 2 cycles. We typically do a February window and then an October window. And I think Barb just alternates that information depending on which cycle we're on. But in terms of long-term planning, we typically do this.
Right.
Barb, do we link critical critical needs grants on here? Do we have information, or do people just write to honors.scholarships and find out about that?
Yeah, we don't have it on our website at all, but I think in the past people just you know, emailed us, and if we thought they needed the link, we would email it to them.
Yeah, so from a funding decision point of view, you want to get all the proposals in front of you and know how much money you have to give, and then you can make those relative decisions about what our funding priorities are. So we kind of have 3 tiers. You know, if you're a senior applying for thesis related research, that's going to be in our top tier. If you're applying for international travel, you know, that's going to be, you know, if you're looking for money for a study abroad program or other types of things, we'd like to have all of those in front of us, and then we can make decisions. Okay, we know everything's top tier and we still have money aside, so we know we can go to some of these. One-by-one applications are difficult because they're harder to make those kinds of decisions, but we also recognize that sometimes things come up that can't necessarily wait for the next October or February. So especially if it's a top tier for us, if it is related to, you know, your thesis research needs, or if, you know, when we do get back to travel again, if a travel opportunity pops up and it's related to one of our top funding opportunities, we are willing to look at things off cycle, but the bar is higher. So you have to email honors.scholarships and kind of make the case. And then, you know, if we think prima facie, it might be a good application, we'll send you that application and look.
Yeah, I do want to mention that this year, because of university belt tightening, our funds are a bit limited. You know, it's not our usual, you know, amounts that we're able to award, but, you know, please do apply. We'll consider every application and try to do the best we can. So.
I think that applies to everything that we're talking about today, but
Yeah, right.
hopefully.
So, questions?
Yeah.
I have a question
Sure.
okay, so I'm not really sure exactly how to frame this question, but if there is an opportunity I'm gonna not talk in hypotheticals. There's a research conference I was invited to internationally, which is not through the university.
Right.
It was a paper written for a class originally, but it's like a separate research project for my thesis. How does that qualify in terms of these grants?
It's a great example of a type of grant that we get, and we're happy to see that. It's a tough one. International conferences are often more expensive than we're able to fund. So often with, you know, domestic conferences, we'll get a lot of proposals. So let's talk a non-COVID year, a non-budget restricted year. You know, we might get a dozen or more, and so we might say, look, we're going to provide $300 or $400 to everybody to do it. Well, $300 or $400 might, you know, be a really helpful chunk if you're going to Chicago to present, but if you're going to an international location, it may be tough. Sometimes we're able to double that. We can also do that if students have strong financial needs. So if we say, look, you know, there are some students for whom, unless they get full funding for this thing, it's not a possibility. So we do make, you know, adjustments on that based on that. And sometimes we're able to do it for international conference travel, but it would just depend on the number of international travel proposals that we got. So know that that's going to go in probably at a little bit less tier, and therefore, now this year in particular, you've got a couple of things that are maybe playing against that. You've got the sort of uncertainty around international travel. We potentially have somewhat reduced funds. And so being in that lower tier, you know, I think I would say, Barb, tell me what you think. I would still love to see you apply, but I wouldn't want to give you false hope on that we could offer a lot of money for that particular proposal in this particular year. Barb, how do you?
Yeah, no, I would echo that. I would say definitely apply, and you know, we'll consider it and see what we can do. But as Henry said, we don't want to get your hopes up.
When is the conference?
June 3rd and 4th.
Okay. Yeah, I think that one's going to be tough. Where is it?
Spain, at the University of Cordoba.
Yeah. That one's going to be tricky for a lot of reasons. My parents actually have a 50th wedding anniversary trip planned that they have tickets to, and are, you know, and we're kind of like, well, we'll see. It's actually to Europe at that same time, so we'll just have to see.
Yeah, it's really tricky. We'll just have to play it by ear.
The application is not a huge amount of work for you, so I would say put it in, and then let's just see where things are. Yeah.
Okay. That sounds good.
I was just going to say, one of the other things about conferences, whether they're international or in the US, we like to know that you have been already accepted to present at the conference. Sometimes students, say they've applied or they think they're going to be invited, but before we award the money, we would like to know that you have been accepted.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you.
And also, this is not a critique of students, because I know some faculty for whom this is the case, and it's also not an entirely illegitimate one. Sometimes conferences are opportunities to travel and take a little bit of a vacation, and we all need the opportunity, especially after this, to travel and take a little bit of a vacation. But when you're a funding mechanism, that's a little bit less appealing than, hey, this is a really fantastic opportunity for me to get these research results out there, get feedback, because this is a crucial part of my honors thesis. I'm going to network with, international experts in my field that will provide a kind of peer network as I go on to apply to my graduate programs. You're getting the kind of language that I think, if you really talk about the kind of academic enrichment project that this would be, that would probably help a lot on that type of application too.
So you're saying if
domestic proposals.
okay. So you're saying if I link my past research to my current honors thesis, that would make my proposal a lot stronger, even if it's international?
Everything has to be done with authenticity and integrity, but sometimes, and this is going to be what I talk about in a few minutes, sometimes having to write out that justification sparks new connected interests that you're like, yeah, this really is connected in these kinds of interesting ways. So sometimes having to write out those justifications, we discover really authentic and integral connections between various things that we're doing.
Okay.
But if it's really helpful, faking it, at some point you've got to, there's a limit to fake it until you make it. There's fake it until you make it, but if it still feels like faking it, then you need to quit and do something different.
Okay, that makes sense. I definitely think the research is connected, but thank you.
Cool. We're going to move on to scholarships and fellowships.
Actually, I'm sorry, I have a question.
Oh, yeah.
Actually. So the first question, I'm sorry if I missed it, but for the second award, what is like the range of funding?
For the grants, tell us what you need. It really depends on the type of application that you're making. We have everything from, honestly, like $75 grants, like, hey, I just need these materials, or a couple $100. And then sometimes with the international travel ones, again, in a normal budget year without COVID, we might give a couple $1,000s for some of these things. So tell us what you need. The other thing I'll throw in, and Barb already mentioned eligible and ineligible expenses. When it comes to research expenses, we really want to know that they are specifically related to your project and not the kind of thing that a lab would provide. So if you're doing biomedical research and you're in a med school lab, most of those materials and processes, we expect the lab PI to be paying for out of the lab's grants. You're there working for the lab. Now your research is, in case that you need some materials or some time on some analytic machines or some diagnostic costs that are very specific to your honors thesis and not the kind of costs that the lab would normally cover, we're willing to look. But sometimes we'll get a $5,000 or $10,000 grant for this research project that we're like, yeah, that's not the kind of grants that we have. These are specifically to support you as honors students. Within that, sometimes people will give us expensive grants if we have to say no, or we can only provide a small amount. But sometimes they give us grants and we're actually able to provide, $1,000 or a couple $1,000s in the case of international travel. Does that sound right, Barb? Do you agree with what I said?
Yes, totally.
Okay, that answers my question. I guess like my second question was more so related to like the eligibility requirements of or of ineligible expenses.
Sure.
I know, like, if you could just like clarify a little bit more. I mean, I know you said things that the lab should be able to provide, but I mean, like for my honors thesis, I was looking into doing something that my lab doesn't really branch into completely. I mean, it's obviously related to the assays that we have to do in the lab, but I might have to get, I don't know, different primers or whatever
Yep.
that my lab, does not use and doesn't have. So how would that kind of fit into that?
Why don't you shoot a specific list to us? It strikes me as the kind of question that's it's easier to answer in the specific than it is in the general. So I think in a lot of cases like that, it's, before you take the time to fill out the whole grant form, why don't you just maybe shoot a quick query to us at honors.scholarships and let us answer in the specific there. How about that?
That makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, cool. All right, honors, scholarships, and grants. So here I actually want to go a little bit out of order from what we have on the page. I want to start with the Benedict Scholarship. We pulled this out of the honors travel grants, even though it's very similar in some ways. This is one of those highly specific gifts that we got from a donor who went to London School of Economics, and that was a huge part of his experience when he was an undergraduate in the honors program. And so he wants to support students who want to go specifically to the London School of Economics or to London-based universities for study abroad experiences. So this is kind of a niche one that if you're applying through CGIS or through a non-U of M study abroad and you're going to the London area, once you've been accepted to that program, go ahead and let us know. I will also say that because we don't get a lot of applications for this every year, it's one where the money can actually build up and we can actually make some fairly sizable grants. Now, again, caveat for this year's funding, everything's going to be reduced. But if you're looking at London area study abroad programs, apply for the Benedict or reach out to us at honors.scholarship, say, hey, I'm in the application process, but as soon as I get my official acceptance, I'm going to fill out the form. So that's the Benedict. Let me go next to the newest edition that we have, which is the Samo Alugovic Fellowship. This is another very specific, in this case, a memorial gift that we had. Samo Alugovic was a marine biologist from Slovenia. The family really wanted to honor his memory by encouraging students to go to the Adriatic region and to fall in love with its natural beauty and with its history and culture and with its people. It's highly specific in the sense that you have to be going to one of 4 countries: Italy, Slovenia, Croatia, or Bosnia-Herzegovina. And you have to be working in one of the following fields: marine biology. They would love to have marine biology folks who wanted to go there, but also biology and ecology more specifically, anthropology, archaeology of the region. So one of the things we're going to have to figure out is what the boundaries of those different disciplines are. I know a lot of people going to this area want to work on sort of more political projects and human rights projects, and we're going to have to kind of figure that out. This is a new fund for us. So again, I would encourage people with questions about, does my project fit with this fund or not, to reach out to us at honors.scholarships. The other thing I'll say about this one, for this year only, because it's COVID, because this is a summer, really travel opportunity, we are willing to look at virtual internships for this year only. Again, the inspiration for the gift is really for students to go to the region and to fall in love with its natural beauty and with its people. But recognizing that this year is a limited one, we will look at virtual internships in the region this year. Study abroad in the region is also eligible, language study. So if you're looking at summer opportunities there. And I'm actually going to circle back to this one in my sort of closing remarks about how I think that these things can fit into your plans. The Morris and Lola Wasserstein, this is actually an alum you might want to look up. Bruce Wasserstein has a Wikipedia page. He was editor of the Michigan Daily, I think in 1968-69, which, if you know your Michigan history, was pretty momentous year on campus. It was either that or 67-68, I can't remember. He then went on to become one of the original Wolves of Wall Street and became an investment banker and sort of takeover specialist in the 80s. So lived through two kind of momentous and notorious periods of American history at the end of the last century. He honored his parents, Morris and Lola Wasserstein, by giving these awards for honors program students who either write or are editors for the Michigan Daily. And we have a lot of them, but I think this is also one that we would love to see more applications for, because I know there are some really great honors program students who do really amazing work for the Michigan Daily. So if you are one of those, or if you know any of those people, this application cycle is going to be coming up pretty soon. We have the deadline at the end of March every year. So you'll see this in This Week in Honors coming up. So again, if any of you are editors for the Daily, or if you have friends that are, please let them know about this award. This is another one where we have a fairly substantial amount of money, and we can actually give some pretty good chunks out of this. We also have people win year after year and sort of work their way up as they work their way up in the hierarchy of the Michigan Daily. All right, last but certainly not least, this is one that I just sent out an email about today. It's going to be in This Week in Honors. We're going to do a specific info session for it next week, so I won't go into too much detail. This is really the only true, what you might call academic merit scholarship that we have in the honors program. The Autograph and Jack Malin scholarships are named for two former directors of the honors program. And they really, in my mind, are premier awards that celebrate students who exemplify what the honors program is all about. So these two awards are specifically for rising seniors. I'm going to pass it off to Barb in just a moment to talk about the awards that we have for graduating seniors. But for rising seniors who have really engaged in what I would call all three dimensions of a liberal arts engaged education. So depth of specialization within their particular field, within their major. So we're going to want to hear about your honors thesis or your Gila project. We're going to want to hear about your research projects that you've engaged in that. We're going to look at how you've done within courses within your specialization. But we also want people with demonstrated commitment to intellectual breadth. So maybe you have another area of interest. The Jack Malin is specifically for interdisciplinarity excellence. So maybe you have two majors that are completely unrelated, or you have a major and a minor that are unrelated. Or maybe you have taken a very interdisciplinary look at your topic. So maybe you're doing biomedical research, but you're also heavily engaged in medical anthropology or sociology, or looking at social determinants of health, or medical humanities, or medical ethics. And your overall approach really exemplifies those two dimensions in tandem. And then the third dimension, we really want to look at students who have both engaged in their questions, both curricularly and co-curricularly. So not just your courses that you've taken and the things that you've done on campus, but your resume and your engagement in those activities. So again, these are really prestigious. Piggybacking off the question that was asked earlier, these are very selective. They require letters of recommendation. They require an interview. They're highly competitive. But we also have very broad notions of excellence. We recognize that there are a lot of different ways of fulfilling those criteria that I just told you. So this is one where I wouldn't want students to take themselves out of the running by thinking, which is classic kind of imposter syndrome. Oh, I'm never going to win this thing. Reach out to me individually and let's have a conversation about this, either as you're a rising senior and thinking about your want to apply, or I'm very happy to have first and second year students come to that session next week and talk. Questions about any of those four scholarships? Let me just very quickly go out of order here, and then I'm going to pass it back to Barb to talk about graduation awards, and we'll do Q&A quickly. Honors Summer Fellowships. This is one where our previous director, Tim McKay, and Mika have gone out and done a lot of fundraising to support the Honors Summer Fellowships. This is a $5,000 fellowship to stay in Ann Arbor in between junior and senior year. So again, I would say rising seniors. Occasionally, we have had sophomores win it if they are writing an honors thesis either early because they're writing 2 honors theses or they're writing it out. But I would say that's pretty exceptional. Most of the time, people are going to have this fellowship in the summer before senior year. And it's to stay here on campus, that's important, and to do honors thesis research. That's sometimes a trade-off because I know that's also a really popular time to go out and do, say, corporate internships. This is a popular time to do funded summer research. If you're in a STEM field, it's a popular time to do international opportunities. And all of those are also really important things. So there is an opportunity cost, but Honor Summer Fellows is an incredible experience if you're selected for it. This is another one that I would say is highly selective. We typically get 60, 70, 80 applications for 15 to 20 spots. We are looking for students who will make significant research progress on their prospective thesis topic, but also who will deeply engage with their fellow students in interdisciplinary discussions. So what this means is not necessarily that your research is interdisciplinary, but that you're going to be in a research cohort. Say I'm in the humanities, I would be in a research cohort with a natural scientist, with a social scientist, with somebody who's in the life sciences, and that we would all benefit from conversations with one another about the research that we're doing from learning, and then of course with the cohort as a whole. So I think that the things we're looking for here are depth of progress that you're likely to make in your honors thesis, and also that interdisciplinary engagement with the cohort as a whole. If you want to know more about this one, there's an already archived presentation that Mika and Kaylee did back in December. That's on the honors archived presentations Canvas site. I will also say, if you happen to be a rising senior, the deadline for this one is coming up very quickly. What, the 19th of February, I think?
19th, yes.
And it requires letters of recommendations, which means if you're interested in this one this year, you got to go fast.
Yeah, and I'll just mention that the stipend was increased to $6,000. So,
nice.
yeah.
Barb, you want to close us out by talking about honors graduation awards? And
Sure.
I think maybe we won't go through all of these awards individually if you just
no.
want to give them a quick overview.
Right. So yeah, I was just going to mention, you'll see there's quite a long list on this webpage of funds that were donated for the purpose of awarding prizes to graduating seniors for outstanding senior theses. And every single one of them requires a nomination by your department, whether it's the chair of the department, your thesis advisor. You know, each one, if you click under each one, you can see the different parameters that are involved with each one. So I won't say a whole lot about this. As I said, you do have to be nominated. There is a form that your nominator can fill out. Right now it's not active, but it will be, I think in March we activate it. And if you or they have any questions about it, the email is honors.prizes@umich.edu.
Thanks, Barb. So I want to just make a couple of closing remarks about ways that these funding opportunities can fit into your 4-year plans. And then we want to close out with last opportunity for you to ask any questions. I'm from a philosophy background, so let me be a philosopher for a second, right? There's kinds of two types of directionality for these things. One is go get involved in your curricular and co-curricular interests for independent reasons. In other words, be that kind of great, curious, engaged honor student that we want you to be taking courses and picking majors and research topics because you're really interested in investigating and working towards solutions on those problems, and the same with your co-curricular activities. And then once you have that really great list of things that you're doing, check in occasionally and see if any of these funding opportunities can support you. So we had a couple of great examples already, like, hey, I had the opportunity, I've engaged in this research, and now I have the opportunity to go present this at an international conference. Can you help me out to make that possible, right? Or I'm committing to writing an honors thesis and I would be willing to stay here during the summer. Let me take a shot at honors summer fellows. So I think those are great examples. I think most of our research and travel grants are people who are already deeply engaged in their activities, and then they're looking at funding sources as ways to make those engagement possible. The other way is actually to put the funding opportunity first and to say, you know what, the honors program has this pot of money, what could I come up with, right? Which is to say, use the funding opportunity as a kind of creative exercise for your imagination to think up engagement opportunities that maybe you wouldn't have thought of. The purest example of this, I'll go back again to the Alugovic fund. And I think this is really baked into the heart of this. You know, this fund wasn't created to support students who are already in love with or from or doing work in the Adriatic region. It was meant to be a kind of spur for imagination. Hey, here's this pot of money. Think about this little corner of the world that is extraordinarily beautiful, has this rich culture and history, and come up with something and tell us about it. Then there's some that I'm on the fence about. So I think about the Wassersteins all the time. We actually do have some chunks of money that we can give. And it's really funny when sometimes students will come to us with a specific thing that they're really engaged. I'll again appeal to the student who has the opportunity to go present some work at Cordoba in Spain. And I think, wow, I wish I had more money to give to you. And then I turn to Wasserstein and I've got big chunks of money that I can give. And I feel like I don't have enough applicants. What do we do then? Do I advise students that are in the honors program to go start writing or editing for the Michigan Daily so that they qualify for those scholarships? It doesn't feel quite right, but I'm not totally opposed to it either, right? If you went and tried out the Daily because you heard about the Wasserstein scholarships, and then you fell in love with the Daily, and that became a really rich co-curricular activity for you and a way to explore issues on campus or issues in the world or work on your writing. If you developed, you know, professional interests that maybe you hadn't developed before, well, then it would have done its work. So I'm not opposed to that kind of thing. On the other hand, I'll kind of say what I said before, right? Fake it till you make it only goes so far. And I wouldn't have you incur the opportunity costs of all the other things that you could be doing on campus that might be more meaningful and important for you, just to be slaving away doing a daily job that you hate to qualify for Wasserstein funds. So I think there are some of these that are kind of in that gray area that can go either way. I think some of them clearly you need to have these independent interests, before you think about applying. And then there are some, again, that I want to put out there and say, hey, the Adriatic region is really gorgeous. It'd be a cool place to spend the summer. Go do some investigating and think about some things that you might do. And, we can help you out and try to make that possible. All right, well, I am in favor of ending 5 minutes early then. And if you have questions that come up as soon as we click off, you're always welcome to send them to honors.scholarships@umich.edu. Barb, thanks so much for being on here with me and for organizing this.
Thank
Doing
you.
all the behind the scenes work.
You're
All right.
welcome. And
Everybody,
thanks for attending, everyone.
yes. Thank you for being here and being the live audience for us. And those of you who are watching on recording, hope you found some useful information here too.